Oh, man. Thank you, guys. So let's start off this class by getting a list. So we're going to go over chickens, but I want to also go over any other animals that you guys might have on your property. So let's start off with a list of animals that you guys may or may have. So let's do chickens. I heard goats, Patty. Goats, sheep, pigs. That's just your imagination, buddy. That's all you need to keep that alive. What am I missing? Rabbits. Oh man, that's rabbits. You said ducks, turkey. I heard dogs. Okay. Bro, farm animals, man. Who said iguanas? All right, so let's start with this list, and then if we have extra time, we'll get into the rest. Okay, so chickens. Has anybody heard of the chicken tractor on steroids system? That is probably going to be the best way to eliminate the feed bill and still get other products at the same time and maintain your overall yield on your chicken system. So let's start off with the most basic way to raise chickens for free. You get a bunch of laying birds, you get like a heritage breed of laying bird, and then you just let them free range. Hey, how's it going, buddy? You can just let them free range, especially if you have like woodline edge or forest edge or anything like that. There's a lot of foraging that they're going to do, and they're going to get all the food that they need to survive, and then they're going to get just enough to lay every once in a while. You won't have as high of a yield as far as your egg production goes, but you will still get some egg production. But it's completely, if you look at the calculation for yield like yesterday, it's the amount of calories you put in, and then the amount of calories you subtract the amount of calories you put in from what you get out of the overall system. So if you can limit the amount of energy or outside inputs that you're putting into a system, you can increase yield that way. So if you're letting your chickens free range effectively, I mean, they're all eventually going to die. I don't recommend this route, just kind of working the juices so far. But you could essentially have 100% profit eggs for the little amount of eggs that you guys do get. So let's step it up a little bit. Let's say we have a confined system, and it's either mobile or stationary. It doesn't really matter. One thing that we could do is use other people's waste streams and use it as an input for our chickens. So you could team up with a bakery, you could team up with a restaurant, coffee shop, whatever it may be. Feed your chickens everything but chicken. Whatever they don't like is just going to decompose in place, and then they'll eat whatever they do like. But when you go make these deals with these restaurants or like schools are the best. They throw away gallons of milk every single day. When you go and make these deals, do not tell them that you are using it for animal feed. Tell them that you are composting with it. And you're not lying. As soon as it poops out the other end of the animal, it started composting. So tell them you're composting. Don't tell them you're feeding it to your animals, and you'll have a pretty high success rate. Also, don't look like you just crawled up out of the fields. Like, take a shower. Put on some like clean clothes whenever you go and do this. Don't look like you could potentially be eating it. So that's really what you're staving off, is like making sure that they don't think like, yeah, right, this dude's just going to be munching down in the back, and then they're liable for you eating that trash. But you could use other people's waste streams to feed some of your systems. The problem is a solution is a common phrase said in permaculture. So now let's get into a little bit more advanced system, right? So let's say you have your chicken coop right here. This is an aerial view. Everybody see that rectangle? That's the chicken coop. I'm not even going to try to draw a chicken. But so I have my chicken coop right here. Let's say this is a completely stationary system. And the bottom of my chicken coop, I always have bedding. So I'm using whatever kind of bedding that I have access to. It could be straw, could be the hay that the cows knocked out of the ring. It could be wood chips. It could be anything. After a week, after the animals have pooped on that bedding for a week, it's going to come out of the cage or out of the chicken coop and go into the first week cage. Now, this cage is going to be, I do a mix of welded wire or woven wire plus hardware cloth or chicken wire around the inside. And it needs to be at least big enough to hold a cubic yard of compost. If it's any less than that, then you're not going to be able to house enough. You're not going to be able to house the microbes. If it's bigger than 3 cubic yards, then you have compost fires. So this cage needs to be somewhere between 1 to 3 cubic yards in volume. And then this is where you feed the chickens every single day. No matter what you feed them everything but chicken. Everything enters this first week compost cage. And then after a week, this flips forward, no longer in the cage. The compost is only in the cage in that first week. So this flips out of the cage, goes forward into your second week compost cage. The week-old bedding goes into the first compost cage, and then now you have 2 overall piles. Is everybody tracking? That's up to you. So it needs to be short enough for the chickens to be able to get in and out. So like I think the last one I made was 18 inches tall, and if I laid it flat, the circumference was like 20 some feet. But just do the calculation, figure out and I would do like 1.5 cubic yards, just so that way like things will settle. If you do exactly 1 cubic yard, after everything settles, you no longer have that cubic yard. Anywhere between 1 to 3 cubic yards. Good, cool. All right, so then another week passes. Your chickens are over here. I guess I will draw a chicken. Your chickens are over here. Oh, jeez. There we go. Your chickens are over here. They're scratching through the second week compost pile. They're getting whatever they didn't get from eating out of here. They're also starting to get some of the bacteria and the microbes that are within that compost cage. That's going to be coming in handy when it comes to eliminating their feed bill. So another week passes. Oh, bumped it. Another week passes. This flips this way. The first week compost cage flips to the second week, and then the week-old bedding goes into the first week compost cage. And then chickens really, really love this one. This, we'll draw a heart over it because it is their favorite. The third week compost cage has the most biological activity going on of all the cages, and that's where they're going to go to first. In fact, you'll notice that you might let them out of the coop in the morning. You throw their feed in that first week compost cage. They will run past that food and go to the third week compost pile to go scratch that down first. And then some will stay at the compost cage, some will go to the pile. But then eventually all of them, once they've taken care of the easy stuff in here, will go back and get whatever feed was left in that first week compost cage. Also, yeah, I guess we'll do another flip. So another flip finally happens, right? And now you have your fourth week compost cage, and this is finished compost at this point. So what started off as a very high carbon input here at the beginning, it got pooped on, added nitrogen, but it was only pooped on one layer, right? And then it got added to this compost cage where you started adding more ingredients, food waste, everything that's not chicken. Because somebody's going to ask me, and it's perfectly fine, but somebody's going to ask me, can I put this in that first week compost cage? And the answer is 100% always going to be everything but chicken. I just don't want cannibal chickens. Everything else is an option. So you put in your week-old bedding here. You put in any garden waste, any food scraps, anything like that. Anything that is grown at one point can grow again in a compost cage. So anything that's like can decompose and compost, you're going to throw in this first week cage. This is the last time you add anything to the compost. And then it flips. And then the chickens are going to scratch it down. As they're scratching it down, they're aerating it, so they're introducing oxygen. They're pooping on it, so they're adding nitrogen. And then they're also going through and breaking up any weed seeds or any pathogens, any microbial activity they might see. Go ahead. There's no more cages after the first week, because here you're still accumulating materials. After it leaves this cage, you're adding no more materials, and then you want the chickens to go through it and get any, because if you're using hay as bedding, then you want those chickens to go through and eat the hay seeds, because you don't want hay growing in your garden typically. But yeah, the first week compost cage is the first and last cage of this entire system. So after the second week, now you have 2 piles that they can derive a lot of their protein from, and then any leftover carb they didn't get from the first compost cage. And then fourth week, these 2 are also going to be your hottest piles. The fourth week pile is going to be on that decline of cooling down. So once you get the fourth week pile, you can flip it out of the system, put it in a pile, and let it come down to ambient temperature. Let the center of that pile come down to ambient temperature. And then you have finished compost that can then be added to your gardens, could be added to your pastures. You can fix all of your farm issues, whether it be fertility, pests, anything like that, disease, with compost. And then after the 4th week, you're producing 1 cubic yard of compost per week. And if you sell your compost, if it's biologically complete, send it in for a soil biology test. I can give you the verification. You can make, I mean, Dr. Elaine Ingham makes $5,000 per cubic yard of compost that's biologically complete. She also sells it in 25-pound bags. So I think you had a question first, and then we'll get to you. Oh, you did. So the watering is probably going to be the trickiest thing to learn out of all of it, because it's going to depend on your environment. Like what I do for watering at my place in Texas is going to be, where do you live? Kansas? Yep. You're going to water less. So yeah, but you're still maintaining proper moisture with every one of these piles. Now, as far as the workload goes, you're going to have to flip this. Like if you dedicate one day where you dedicate like maybe an hour and a half to this particular system, that's all the maintenance you're going to need. Other than like, if they really flatten a pile, then you might want to go just make sure you know where the pile is, make sure they don't completely destroy it. But yeah, what was your question?
Are you moving everything out of that and flipping it into a whole other pile?
So everything in the first week compost cage gets removed. I just take the cage off and flip it out. Yep. Yeah. I do, like, I also treat it like a workout too. So if it's like a little bit further than what would be normal, then that's okay with me, but do whatever would be like a normal swing distance for you, but also far enough to make sure the compost piles don't blend. So there, I'm not going to lie to you. This does take some effort. This does take time. It does take a time dedication. But what you get out of it is you eliminated the feed bill. The chickens are getting all of their carbs and their protein and whatever fats from this first week compost cage, plus the protein within these compost piles. You're going to have more egg production because of the increase in protein. You're going to skip the molting season because of the increase in protein. Like you have better eggs for a longer period of time throughout the year, and happier chickens because now they have a job. Just by making them make your compost for you. And then on top of that, you get a cubic yard of compost. After the 4th week, you get a cubic yard of compost every week. And then you can sell that to fix your own place first, and then you can sell that to the community. And this doesn't even have to be a permanent thing, because once you fix the fertility on your property, once you fix the fertility, it's a permanent fix as long as you don't create anaerobic conditions or compaction. So you could then, after like fixing your own place, go to your neighbor's place. What was your question?
I've had piles that will run really high in temperature for extra long. So I guess my thought for a lot of people is that 4 weeks is it depends, because like you might have to increase, if you keep continually noticing that, you might have to increase your carbon input in the brush.
That's a good point. So I'll rephrase it. So where the 4th week is when you're waiting for that cool down to happen, you're waiting for ambient temperature, and then after that, you're good to go. So don't use it just because it's at its 4th week. It may or may not be at the right temperature. The reason behind the temperature is that once the temperatures start coming down, that's whenever you're giving way from bacteria dominant compost over into higher like fungi accounts in the compost. And then that's what most people are missing in their gardens and their growing systems is the fungi component, not so much the bacteria. All the soils I've tested, there's always some bacteria. There's very little fungi, if ever, in really bad soil. Go ahead. The compost well, yeah. So how do you use the compost after it's finished? I would always do extracts. Teas are very, very difficult to get right. And if you don't have a microscope within reaching distance of you, you never really know if you made a tea or an anaerobic concoction. So they're tricky. They're very, very tricky. So I would always do extracts, which you just take a handful of the compost, couple handfuls, I put them in a paint strainer, and then I dunk that in a 5-gallon bucket of ambient temperature water. And then after I do that 2 or 3 times, I can dilute that bucket of water up to 20 times. And then I can apply it as a soil drench, as a leaf spray, as whatever I want to. That's the most efficient way to use your compost. The least efficient way to use your compost is like taking a handful of it and putting it in your garden. Not saying you shouldn't do that. It's just you should do that after its 3-week or 3-month peak. So whenever it starts evening out and like balancing out and everything. I have a ton of compost videos. I'm on YouTube, the Permaculture Consultant. I have a ton of compost videos. Yeah. Question in the back?
Something that,
Good question. Yeah. So what's the ideal number of chickens? If you have dual purpose chickens, anywhere between 17 to like we've done it up to 50 before. Now keep in mind, once you get up to 50, it's you're going to be flattening piles every single day. So you're going to have to add a little bit of work, or let's say you don't want them to do that much destruction on one particular pile. You just duplicate the system. You just do another chicken tractor on steroids if you wanted to. But like if you're in the egg business, I'm sure some of you guys have gotten into laying birds and they're like, okay, I'm going to make some profit off selling the eggs, but I'm buying feed at the grocery store or at the feed store. You won't make a profit off eggs and sell them at a price that people want to pay them for. Go ahead. Oh, hey. So yeah, this is where you can add all kinds of manures to this first week cage if you wanted to. Rabbit poop, cow poop, horse poop, anything like that. That's where you would add it, is this first week compost cage. So add everything but chicken. Everything but chicken to that first week cage. Go ahead. It depends. It depends is the classic permaculture answer, because it all depends. So I can tell you my thought process behind it as far as like which bedding I'm going to choose. So if I'm going to use this compost for a garden system, or if I plan on making a bunch of extracts with it, then I'll do something that'll break down a little bit faster. Something like hay is going to break down fast, especially if I increase the surface area of it. So if I like chip it or shred it or something like that. Also, straw is another one. Another good one. It's slightly higher in carbon, but still it's not wood. And then and I would use those for like garden applications. But if I'm making like a real high quality, either tree potting soil or tree mulch, or if I'm trying to take care of like high fungal needs systems, then I'll switch over to some sort of wood chip, aged wood chip if at all possible. But at the end of the day, I just need the really high carbon because I'm trying to feed fungi at that point. Leaves would be good. You have to be careful with leaves because they will compact and make like an impervious layer in your compost cage. So whenever you use leaves, make sure and be careful which leaves you use, because oak will take a lot longer to break down than redbud leaves. But try to increase the surface area and mix them thoroughly with other carbon sources so they don't create that thick layer.
The ratio between like carbons to greens with the system keep track of?
There is still the carbon to nitrogen ratio. I don't keep track of it though. Because I know like I'm very, very carbon heavy on this end right here. Because let's think of the garden waste that I'm putting in here. It's usually once the plant has hit the end of its life cycle, right? So it's going to be higher in carbon than it would be in nitrogen whenever it's like brand new, fresh, green growing growth. That's going to be higher in nitrogen. But since everything's hitting the end of its life cycle, it's all going to be higher in carbon. So I know I'm really, really carbon heavy, plus the bedding. And I know that bedding's only hit the top side of that, the bedding and all that, or the poop is only hit the top side of that bedding. So, and I know most of the food scraps that I add are going to be high in nitrogen, but the chickens are also going to eat most of those. So I would say it's something to keep track of. Like if you're getting here and it's still hot like a month later, probably had too much nitrogen. And if you get here and it's completely cold and it like stopped heating up on this third week pile right here, then you're probably too high a carbon. So
You could take and move it out. You just like continually move out when you're getting there. It's like a different piles.
So yeah, you can accumulate up to 3 cubic yards. So once it's over 3 to 4 feet tall, the center of that is going to go anaerobic. So then you would go into 3 foot tall windrows. That's the best way to store it. And then keep in mind, at this stage, you're still going to have to manage the water. So you still need to maintain that 50% water capacity within your compost. Last question on this system, and then let's talk about some other animals.
How do you know we have that water?
So the best way to test the water on your compost is take a handful of it, squeeze it. You should get 1 drop to form and fall, and that is perfect 50% hydration. Also, if you wanted to, before you add things to this first week compost pile, you could put them in a container, let them soak overnight in water, and then drain off the water. You're adorable. You just drain off the water and then add it to your compost cage. That way, you know it's rehydrated up to that 50% perfect moisture content. Okay, so chicken tractor on steroids. If you guys have any more questions about it, I'll be at the booth all day. So feel free to come and talk to me. Let me erase this real quick. All right, so we did chickens.
Are you just feeding your dogs or?
Depends on how they died, but yeah, I don't put dead chickens back into the chicken tractor on steroids. It's like, y'all can eat everything else but chicken. And then also you risk, like if they eat the central nervous system of the same animal, then they risk like prionic diseases. And that's mad cow. Mad cow is a prionic disease. So those aren't good. And chickens are already stupid enough. We don't need holes in their brains or anything. So goats, let's go over goats. Patty. So goats have a rumen. So the only reason that you should have to pay for anything as far as your goats go, as far as the feed goes, is if you're overstocked. If you have more goats than what your land will carry, right? So goats thrive on what we see right back here in this forest. They're more browsers than they are grazers, so they don't eat a whole lot of grass, but they focus on woody species. So yeah, goats. They're not my favorite in temperate environments because you will have to take care of the worming cycle as well. Unless you get just like a very unique flock that doesn't have parasites or very, very parasite resistant, it's not the norm. So you'll have to think about the worming. And if we're looking at removing the outside inputs of a particular system, how do we provide worming on site? The best solution you have here in Kansas is to make sure there's black walnut trees in the paddocks for the goats or anywhere on the property, because if they want to get out of the fence, they're just going to do that. And then, yeah, goats. So goats are fairly easy. And then as far as like wintering, let's say you have like heavy winters or something like that, then one thing that would be a good idea, instead of like going through and buying a bunch of hay, is to, let's say you're clearing forest, right? Well, every time you cut down a tree, let's say you coppice it all the way down to the ground or you pollard it, whatever you decide to do, it's going to, as long as you leave that stump there, it's going to spark growth within that stump, that cut part. Now it's going to produce a bunch of like twig-like shafts that have a ton of leaves on them. The next year you can go through, harvest those twigs. It's called tree hay, and you can either feed it fresh to your goats or your sheep, either one, or you can hang them up in your barn, let them dry, and then feed them over winter. It's the classic hay solution for overwintering animals. It's a tree hay. So there are more species of trees that will work than there are that don't. I would say generally stay away from fruit woods. But oaks are awesome. They're also high in tannins. They're going to worm your goats. Walnut leaves are good. Poplar leaves are good. I mean, there's a lot more that will work than there are that don't. You could do red buds, you could do willows, anything really. I mean, for the most part, just do a little bit of research before you feed the tree hay. But goats, I would focus on giving tree hay over. If you have goats, if you're dead set, if you're a masochist and you want those goats and you have to overwinter them, let's say if you get heavy snows and you got to overwinter them in a barn, I would give preference over to tree hay than regular hay, just because they're going to do better on tree hay. Now, if you don't get heavy snows, then you should be doing the Jim Garish method of stockpiling forage in your pasture. It's a way to stockpile hay without actually having to go out there and cut hay. It's a grazing technique where you start, the basic principle of it is that you calculate how many days you have in your pasture, what's your rotation before they actually come back and visit a particular spot, which if you're grazing correctly, you should already generally know. And then you graze fast when the grass is growing fast. So like spring events, you're just having your animals come through and then just trim the tips. And then whenever the grass is growing slow, you slow way down, and then they start grazing all the way down, mostly to the ground. So it's a very high impact, long rest. So that's the gist of it as far as the grazing goes. But if you don't get snows, then there's no reason to overwinter your goats into a barn and feed them hay over winter. You should be able to stockpile enough going into winter where you can just bring them directly to where they need to eat. Now, sheep, a lot of the same applies to the sheep. In fact, your ruminants should be, they just by nature of what they are, they should be free to feed. They thrive on grass. They thrive on species that are already growing out here. Unless you're in a position where you have nothing growing, like I just did a consultation for a lady in Utah. She has rocks. She's got to get the grass to start growing before she can actually bring animals out there and, you know, get that whole system rocking. But if you're in an area like Kansas where you already have woods, you already have pasture and everything like that, then there's no reason you should have to buy hay over winter. Also, Kansas doesn't typically, I grew up here, so I know, you don't typically get like snow pack. So if we get snow, it just lasts for a little bit and then it melts away. It's not like we have consistent snow pack throughout the winter. That's the only scenario where I would overwinter animals in a barn, is if I have consistent snowpack over the winter. Because even then, like to a certain extent, the animals can nuzzle through the snow and get what's underneath, especially if there is actually forage underneath that you stockpiled for that specific occasion. So ruminants, so we can kind of mark off goats, sheep. Oh, nobody said cows. Well, cows are in the same category. They're ruminants. Like if you have to buy hay over winter, you have too many animals, or your forage isn't squared away. You might have to start off with like 2 head of steer, and then as you increase the forage density, which you can increase 300% per season that you graze correctly, then you can start increasing your stocking numbers. Or let's say you have 120 acres or something like that. Don't start grazing the whole 120 acres. Learn small and learn close to you. Get the rotation pattern down. See what good pasture management looks like compared to bad pasture management. Like what perfect grazing looks like as opposed to like overgrazed. Get that down in a small location around your house. And then as you build confidence, as you build knowledge, then you can start expanding, and then you can start grazing the rest of your property. That's another thing that money tends to come in and fix, is like a lot of people are, meaning like you can people will end up throwing money at the problem if they don't take the time to learn, and then they get too many animals, and then they're going to graze all of their property all at once. Then they start buying hay as they're trying, and so they're spending money as they're trying to learn, where you could just take a minute, learn, and then you could save the money in the long run by not having to fix these random mistakes or feed hay over winter. But Jim Garish, it's called The Kick the Hay Habit. It's a fantastic book if you are in that position. And guys, I'm not bashing if you are in that position. We have literally all been there. That's why we started asking about permaculture, because it eliminated the outside inputs. So let's go to pigs. Pigs are going to be, it's very dependent upon the breed of pig that you have. So I would focus on like more of your heritage breed pigs that still will work for their food, as opposed to the ones that are like commercial varieties and everything. When you're buying pigs for the homestead, try to buy pigs from the place that is mimicking the way you want to raise your animals, and you'll have far less headaches. So pigs, another way to feed your pigs for free is, again, teaming up with your local community. So if you have somebody that milks, they have a bunch of like excess product that they either don't have time to deal with, or they're just throwing it away, or they're throwing it in compost, or they're throwing it in some sort of carbon diaper to soak up that high nitrogen. You can make a barter system with them where they get all their spent whey or whatever's left over from the dairy process, that you get the excess, and then you raise a percentage of meat for them. That's community there. You could also hit up local restaurants, coffee shops, all that stuff. Just remember, don't tell them you're feeding it to your pigs. Tell them you're making compost out of it. Every time we've said we're feeding animals with it, we've been told no. Every time we've said we're making compost out of it, especially if you go to like a super liberal city, they start fanboying, and it gets real awkward in the dumpsters. So there's another route. You don't even have to ask anybody. You can just go dumpster diving. For me, I'd rather go that route 100% of the time, because half the time whenever I'm going to get these dumpster runs, I'm trying to do it as quickly as possible because it's going into my overall yield. If I have to have conversation with Jim Bob every time I go and get the food scraps, and that's slowing me down and cutting into the overall yield of that particular system. Now, you could also look at the second ethic of permaculture, which is people care. And if that is your sense of like communing with the populace per week, then spend that time with Jim Bob maybe. It's just, this is where the design starts like niching down to the actual person. But yeah, team up with especially Mexican restaurants. Usually most of their food scraps is going to be rice, beans, tortilla chips, avocado shells, onions, a lot of that. So a lot of carb heavy. You rarely see any kind of meat in Mexican restaurant waste. So you don't have that concern of feeding pork back to your pork. Coffee shops also, that's usually a good place to go. I mean, bakeries 100%, especially like ethical bakeries. That's a good way to go. Also food banks. It's not going anywhere after the food bank. That's a good place to go get some food. Elementary schools as well. They throw away gallons of milk every single day. So yeah, think of these places where the food ends and you can go and pick it up and use it for compost. And that's how you raise your pigs for free. And then also rotating them through a particular piece of property. You could either keep them stationary and they're not going to do any foraging and you keep on adding like a carbon diaper to them to make them clean. Or you can rotate them through new growth forest that then gives you access to cut down the trees that you want to cut down. And then also they're able to forage some of their own diet there, as well as increase blood flow through the meat and everything. Like any animal that has an increased blood flow is going to taste better than an animal that's been sedentary its entire life. So, all right. So we went over any questions on pigs. Go ahead.
Something like a Mexican restaurant, do you have to worry about the seed oils that they're using in frying food?
Am I worried about the seed oils and what they're using to fry the food? To an extent. I mean, like, it's not going to be a make or break situation from me, but one good place to go to is like Chipotle. At least whenever I was doing it, they were still non-GMO. And I would, if I had like a tier list, I would worry about GMO more than I would the seed oils. Not saying that, not diminishing the effect of like motor oil or anything like that in your body system, but it's just a hierarchy. Because you can easily, like, especially where I live in the food desert of East Texas, like far East Texas, like I'm going to easily like nope my way out of every single deal. Or you could just switch over to a ruminant system if you wanted to. Yeah. Any other questions on pigs? Okay. Let's get into rabbits. So rabbits. A lot of people are bought into rabbits because a breeding pair will produce more meat in a year than a cow will. But one thing that they don't talk about when it comes to rabbits is, unlike the cow, where I put it in a pasture and it goes and gets all its own inputs, it goes and gets its own water. Like if I just have to provide the water source, gets its water, it gets its food, it walks around, it does all the travel for it and everything like that. All I have to do is rotate them every once in a while. The rabbits are the opposite. They stay in a cage, whether it be a rabbit tractor or like an elevated cage, whatever it is, and I have to bring all the inputs to that rabbit. So, which is fine during the spring, summer, and going into the fall, like if I'm growing all these inputs for this rabbit. But now I have like dedicated garden space that I have to add for this rabbit. I now have species that I'm like specifically growing for this rabbit. Rabbits need fat through the winter, so I'm going to have to grow some sort of millet for this rabbit to provide fat for the rabbit. Unless you're, like, I've seen it done well in some systems, and then I've also seen systems where it's like the thing that takes up the most amount of time. So it's a give or take. Like you can easily grow everything you need to keep rabbits year round, but now that's something dedicated that you have to do just to eliminate that outside input of buying Timothy hay and all that crap and rabbit pellets and stuff like that. It's doable, but it's just, is the amount of meat you're getting from that, or is the pelt worth the amount of effort you're having to put into that particular system? I've seen it done well, and I've also seen it take up the majority of the time per day as far as chores go. Now, Jeff Lawton, he did it pretty well, where like every morning, as far as the apprentices' jobs or the volunteers' jobs, whoever was there, every morning we'd meet up at the commons area, right? And then from the commons area, we'd get like the game plan for the day. And then everybody first thing in the morning helped out in the main crop system. Now, as we walk to the main crop, we're passing through two different food forests that have all kinds of ground covers, all kinds of perennial species that work well throughout the year that we can harvest for the rabbits that are just uphill from the main crop system. Now, a lot of the weeds that we were pulling out of the main crop system also went to the rabbits that were just uphill from the main crop system. So you can design these things in a way, talking about zoning from yesterday, increasing yields with no extra work. you can design these things where like, all right, if I know I have to take care of the rabbits every single day and I'm growing everything for these rabbits, let me put what I'm feeding them in the way of getting to the rabbits so I can do it as I'm going to the rabbits. So that system is going to be way higher yielding than having my house right here, my rabbits over here, and then my garden for the rabbits way over here. Now I got to do all this traveling just to feed something once or twice a day. So rabbits can be done well. I'm not discouraging anybody from doing rabbits. They're just not as easy as you think because you have to bring all the inputs to them. Now, before we get into duck, let's talk about an unusual one. Isn't that the lizard thing, the salamander? Yeah. Now let's talk about something that requires all you have to do is provide shelter and it will do the rest. Pigeon, believe it or not. All you have to do is provide a shelter for the pigeons, get a breeding pair, a male and a female. They will mate for life. And they will raise young, they will get their own water, they will get their own food, they will do everything. All you have to do is provide a shelter for them, let them raise a baby. Once the baby's bigger, because there's a point with the squab where the squab is actually bigger than the parent bird. Once it hits that point, you just go snatch that squab up and then they repeat the cycle over and over again. But that is a very high yielding system with very, very little work. All you have to do is provide the shelter. 30-day-old squab. And then if crap hits the fan or when crap hits the fan, carrier pigeons. You can send messages to your buddies and pals and stuff like that. There's still people that do that. They can still keep that whole system alive and everything. Apparently the original carrier pigeon has gone extinct, so they're trying to bring that breeding back into society or something. But that'd be awesome if I got mail from like a bird. I love that. It's more reliable than my current USPS system. Jeez. So pigeon, that's one that nobody really thinks about, but is a very high yielding system because it takes like nothing to, like if I'm building one little container for pigeons, it's just as easy to build 10 and just keep the sheets whole and like just, screw everything together. Far less cuts with building 10 at a time than just one at a time. So if I have 10 breeding pairs, that's like a squab per month, potentially. Go ahead.
The pigeons are always there anyhow.
Yeah, grain elevator. Yeah. Yeah, there's grain there. They're probably going there to go feed their babies that are fat. All right, so ducks. Now, this depends on the type of duck that you have. Oh, go ahead.
Also, you like to do quail. You just do quail.
Oh, man. I was hoping this one didn't come up. Quail. So quail are another one that's very, very input heavy. Like they die on accident. Like if I'm not paying attention to where I step, I just wiped out 5. Like you have to bring all of their inputs to them. And then also you don't get very much meat at the end of the deal. So I was actually talking to Zegley about like potentially, I'm like, hey dude, this is a nut I haven't cracked yet. You feel like growing quail on your property? And then we talked about other things. So I don't know if that's happening or not. It was probably on purpose so he can not grow quail on his property. But I like scenarios where I would grow quail is if, let's say, part of my business was a hunting preserve, I would raise my own quail for that hunt and then train them to like fly. So you can increase the prices. Like, yeah, these birds are guaranteed to jump if you spook them. Like there's a reason, like not just for funsies or anything. But yeah, I would teach them to like jump so they will perform better on hunting preserves. That was really the only time I would justify raising quail. Or there's another scenario. There's a family that I know. They're in South Carolina, and they're the caretakers of this 2,600 acre polo ranch. And this is the most ballin' statement I've ever heard in my life. But they lose acres every year due to the ocean, and I was like, that's wild. But they have free reign to do whatever they want to on this, and is being funded by a billionaire who literally just wants to be able to fly in, get some free meat every once in a while, and then fly out. It's like his little pet project for this. So if you're in that scenario and you're like, all right, well, this billionaire is footing the bill. I would like some quail, or I'd like to hunt some quail on this polo ranch, then do some quail. There is always the people aspect to these systems. There's 3 ethics in permaculture. There's earth care, there's people care, and return the surplus to the first 2 ethics. Anybody who says fair share, they're communists. And anybody who says like setting limits to population on the 3rd ethic might be still trying to argue for like eugenics. So the proper 3rd ethic is return the surplus to the first 2 ethics. If something fits the people care aspect, and it's like, all right, my wife really likes quail and we can foot the energy expenditure, then get some quail. But it's got to make sense to some extent. Go ahead.
For hunting, and then there's the Cotornix quail that has been raised for thousands of years in Japan, never been outside of a cage. You're not going to free range these things. And I mean, I think that you could, those are pretty low maintenance, but probably not in the low maintenance for free.
Right. Yeah. So you have to calculate yields to determine overall profit. So if my yeah, that's good, but there's a lot that goes in behind that egg. So if I have to grow all of its own food, there's all the energy expenditure going into growing that food to then feed that egg in 5 weeks. It's still small. I can eat 2 dozen quail eggs in one sitting. So I gotta think about those things. Or I could put in less work and make compost at the same time and just raise chickens. That's the quail. It's just hard for me to justify for now. There might be something to figure out. I don't know yet. Go ahead.
Perspective, I guess, and maybe this is a dumb thing to say, but I know people who won't even hunt quail because of the low reward.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine if it's not even worth shooting.
Yeah.
Is it worth raising?
I say no. Like, I want to be able to, like, my tier list on meat is like, what can I kill once and feed a lot of people with? So I can eat however many quail. I can eat 1 chicken. I can eat a lamb about 60 times. I can eat a cow about 400 to 500 times. That's kind of how I tier list the animals on the property. Or what else can they do for me? Or is it like taking away any energy from me per day? Go ahead. Oh, there's like 3 hands. You first.
I think the best use for quail is if you live in an area where you can't have chickens, it's a good option because most cities don't have ordinances against quail yet.
So if you live in a city that has ordinances where you can't have chickens, tell them they identify as bald eagles and then they can't do anything about it. Yeah. Let's do her real quick and then you after that.
Llamas, anything like that? Do you ever have those?
Every once in a while, the emu and ostrich has not popped up yet, thankfully, because what the heck? Why?
Emu farm, I guess.
I get it. It's very tough. Like, it's not unless you're just doing it. Like, okay, so llama and alpaca, for a while there, you were able to get like $80 a month if you were to raise alpacas. But the issue with alpacas and like using the fiber for anything is that there's really very few people in the United States that even process alpaca first. So then you got to send it over to Peru, and now we got tariffs, and now it's like it's not. To me, it's not worth it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with an animal not being worth it on your property. In fact, I've never had to try to convince people like, hey, you should do more animals. It's always like, hey, you need to cut back on these animals. Having diversity is important, but there's a point to the diversity. You want diversity up until you hit the point of harmony. Too much diversity for no reason at all creates chaos. And then too much energy input to any system past the harmonic point is going to create chaos. This sounds like a bunch of woo-woo crap, but it's just like observation of patterns in nature. For example, like a water flowing down the stream, the appropriate amount of energy flowing down that stream is going to create vortices on the backhand side of that boulder. But if I have too much water flowing down that stream and it hits that boulder, it's going to just create like whitewater turbulence on the back end. There's not going to be any observable patterns or anything like that. It's just going to be bad, and nothing can really use that energy for anything positive. Sorry. Did you have a question? Fish. Okay. Yeah. That's a good one. Fish. All right. So let's do. Okay. So ducks, real quick. unless you're doing Muscovies, all these ducks have water. They need to be in contact with water. I recommend Muscovies a lot of the time because most people are thinking like, oh, I'm going to get like 10 to 15 ducks and they're going to manage my pond. I'm telling you right now, like a half-acre pond can be managed healthily with 3 ducks. Most ducks are going to knock down that riparian edge, which is your filter and oxygenation system for your pond. And if they knock down that riparian filter, then the fish in your pond are going to suffer because they're low oxygen and now they're getting very, very dirty soils. So I recommend Muscovy ducks more than I do any other kind of duck because you can keep them off your bodies of water. And if you rotate your ducks through like forested systems, like if you rotate your Muscovies through forested systems, your egg production won't be as high as your chickens, but you won't need to feed them, especially if you maintain them and move them frequently. Like ducks can be a very, very easy system. It's just most people get the wrong kind of ducks for their property. Because if I have to keep it around a body of water, then I'm not managing where it's going or directing its efforts. It's doing whatever it wants every single day. Or I can get a different kind of duck, put it in a fence, manage its efforts, and rotate it through a forested system, and then remove the feed bill. Lower egg production, but the yield is 100% because all I'm having to do is move these animals and collect eggs. That's it. I would take a Muscovy duck breast over a steak. That's for sure. They're amazing, especially if you get that crispy fat. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right, so there's ducks, and now we'll talk about turkeys. Turkeys are another one that do very, very well free ranging, especially if you stick to heritage breeds of turkeys. If you let them free range within your forested systems, especially in large enough flocks where they can defend themselves, if you get them trained to come back to a shelter at night, they will wipe out all of the ticks. They will wipe out a large portion of the mosquitoes, but you have to have a safe enough place for them to be able to free range mostly. You'll have a smaller bird by the time Thanksgiving comes around, but it's 100% yield. Like most of this, you have to accept that you're either going to break even, like as far as like size, as far as the conventional way of doing things, or it's going to be slightly reduced, but your yield is higher because you put in less energy to raising that, or your production might be a little bit lower in some instances like the ducks. But your yield is higher because there's less energy going into that system. So turkeys, they can be free range. You just have to have a small enough or safe enough place to go. Or you can also do turkeys in your chicken tractor on steroid system because they will scratch through compost piles as well. But I would lean more towards the 3 cubic yard compost pile than the 1 cubic yard because if you do 1, they're going to flatten it in no time. The legs on turkeys are bigger and they're stronger and they move more material faster. So you can also keep them with your chickens if you wanted to. Then dogs. So this is where dogs become the waste stream consumer of processing everything else. There's nothing that says your dog is a carnivore. It should do pretty doggone well using a meat-based or organ-based diet. So anytime you process any of these animals, keep the organs, keep the parts that you're not going to eat, keep the blood meat that you're not going to put into sausage, keep all of those things. You can grind it up or you can chop it up. You can do whatever you want to and put it in 5-gallon Ziploc bags and then throw it in the freezer. And then you can feed your dogs, or you can do a John Willis approach of you just give your dog a whole rabbit. Now his dog is like a lion? Yeah, it's a Kangal, and he's got 2 of them, so he can do that. But if you have a little, what's a small dog? Little dachshund, and you give him a rabbit, might be scared. So, yeah, process it accordingly for your dog. But your dog, let's say you have a spoiled dog and it's very used to kibble, it'll go hungry for a couple of days and then it'll make the transition. It's a dog. He'll figure it out. Okay, so that one's done. Now fish. Fish is fish are awesome because you have the opportunity of growing protein suspended in water, so they have less gravitational issues as far as fighting gravity constantly in order to grow. So they can put on meat faster that doesn't need to be supported by bone. So their meat to weight ratio is higher than your typical ruminants that grow on land that need more bone structure to support that meat, right? But most people usually put more fish in a pond than what that pond can hold, which then causes you to have to put out feeders and things like that. Now, you can go the store-bought feeder route and then put out feed and all that stuff, or you can increase the edge of your pond. So let's do a little demonstration. All right, so if I have a pond, both of these ponds, good. Oh, thanks. Awesome. So both of these ponds are half acre. We'll put half acre right here. And so for a sphere is the maximum amount of volume with the least amount of surface area. But the surface area is where I'm going to grow trees as food for my fish, right? So let's say I do the same volume, but I increase the surface area. Right? So my pond looks like that, still half acre, but I can fit far more trees. I can roughly 2 to 3 times the amount of trees on this pond just by increasing the edge. I'm not taking up any overall space. I'm not taking up any more space. All I'm doing is increasing the edge, which gives me more opportunity. It's utilizing the edge effect to increase production. So let's say I needed a total amount of 30 mulberry trees planted around this pond to attract insects and to drop fruit into the pond to feed my fish, but 30 won't fit on this pond. I could redesign the pond to increase the edge. Now I can fit 60 mulberry trees on this pond just because same volume, same amount of space taken up. I just increased the edge and allowed more things to grow along the edge of that pond. Edge happens and patterns happen whenever you have the pressure between 2 different media coming in and interacting with each other. So you can utilize that, and that's where the highest amount of energy is used. That's where all the excess energy is thrown, is towards those edge events. So you can use those edge events to also passively increase fertility as well. Like just a quick edge effect is like everybody has a fence of some sort around them, right? They notice every fall, if it's perpendicular to the prevailing wind, that fence line always captures leaves. Now, one of my chores every year is to mulch my trees. I could just put my trees planted along that fence right there, and then it passively mulches every year with no extra effort on my end. That's another example of using the edge effect. If we look at this forest right here, first 20 yards going into the forest is the edge of the pasture. That's going to be thicker and higher fertility than the center of that forest, where there's only one input from the sun coming straight up. There's 3 edges interacting with each other on the edge of this forest. There's the pasture, there's the forest, and then there's the light hitting that forest edge. So that's why the first 20 yards of a forest are going to be thicker than the heart of the forest, because there's more energy occurring along the edge of that system. I don't even know how we got on that topic, but if you increase the edges on your pond, you can grow more trees that will attract insects and drop fruit into your pond for fish. And whatever the maximum amount of fish you can hold with the trees planted around that pond is the number that I would stick to. And if you need to increase those numbers, then I would say dig another pond. Go ahead.
Creek that's been dammed, the tree's completely over. Do they have to have sunshine?
So the trees, yeah. So you have the benefit of having trees already near there. So it's going to keep the temperatures a little bit even more stable. But I would start opening up the canopy a little bit, dropping some of the diseased, not good looking trees and replacing them with mulberries that will drop fruit into the pond. And it doesn't have to be mulberries. It could be really any small fruiting species you wanted to. You could also just line the edge of that pond with a bunch of insect attractants. That's going to be a big thing, a high protein input for your fish as well. Things that will attract the insects, and then your fish can eat them. There's a little trap set up for them. Black soldier fly larvae floats in the middle of the pond. That would work if you're it would work year round if you're in tropical to subtropical environments. If you're somewhere, still a fantastic idea, but if you're somewhere where you have freezing temperatures over winter, then you're going to have to replace it every spring and do the whole system over again, which is fine. Still free protein. Depends on the fish you're eating. Like roadkill, he mentioned roadkill. Oh, yeah. Roadkill going into the black soldier fly. Now, if you're raising catfish, yeah, you can throw roadkill in your pond. It'll get eaten. Maybe don't want to eat catfish. Y'all ever found a possum in a catfish? I have. Any other questions?
I think doing your rotation, your tags, make sure you use hand-free right. Something to be said about the good insects that multiple eyes down. Some of these problems.
Yeah. How do you get rid of problem insects following your animals? Yeah. It's actually a phenomena within permaculture. Is like the common saying is like if you take like a single step towards working with nature, nature will take 10 steps towards you. So there's like compounding effects to just doing one thing correctly. So just by grazing your animals, for example, grazing your animals in a pasture correctly, you're creating the backbone of a healthy ecosystem, and you're now putting that system in harmony. So if you put a system in harmony, it's going to attract and balance out everything that it needs to attract and balance out. So grazing your animals correctly, and then following through with your chickens, you're going to disrupt the anaerobic parasite cycle. You're increasing the organic matter in your pasture. Other birds are going to be attracted to the cow manure as well. They're going to go through, pick up seeds, and they're going to spread those seeds around. They're going to build up their own family. They're going to put the pest issues in check. Now, specifically face flies, if you're trying to get rid of face flies, a lot of the face flies can be gotten rid of just by increasing the salt intake of your particular animals. There's quite a few videos on YouTube on how to use like Redmond salt or like Omri something or other, and adding it to their water. And then once they get up to the correct mineral content in their blood, then they no longer have like face flies. And then you'd be surprised at how much salt water that they actually drink. Unlike us, animals can go out into a pasture and know what it needs to like help cure itself. All you have to do is provide it with those things. So if they need salt in like an aqueous form, then yeah, just set up a salt container over there and let them drink from it, and they know how much they need. They won't overdo it. And then also leave them regular water as well. But yeah, salt is a big one to get rid of face flies. Mineral dense salt. Also, you can increase martin houses. So if you put up martin houses about 20 feet up in the air, they're birds. They will knock out most of your mosquitoes and face flies on a property. And the cool thing about it is like once you get a breeding pair to come back to your nest, they're going to keep coming back year after year as long as nothing else takes that nest. Go ahead. Most of it is just building like a tower with the martin houses on there and making sure no other bird gets it. Because every time they migrate, they're going to find it and they're going to be like, oh, cool, I got an open home. But if something else is in there, then they won't fight over it. They'll just leave. Go ahead. Potentially, it would make sense. Anytime you add like a water feature where it's being stored, you're going to attract something. Usually a whole bunch of things. But any other questions? Go ahead.
You know, cow getting most meat, but also factoring in what do you prefer, sheep?
It depends on the land. It depends. It depends on the landscape. So then it depends on the landscape. It depends on the education level of the person I'm consulting for. With me, if I had, okay, let's say my dream is to have a 2,000 acre ranch. I am going to immediately get into elk and water buffalo, but I also know how to graze. So if somebody else had that same dream of doing elk and water buffalo, then I would say, all right, let's start small. Let's start with sheep, something that's not going to try to actively escape the fence, something that you can easily titrate, learn how to graze on that, and then we might elevate into cows after that, and then get into your larger migratory flocks like elk and then water buffalo to an extent.
I have a question from the internet.
Okay.
We are live streaming this to YouTube, by the way.
Hey, guys.
Freebird asks, I was wondering if you could put weeds covered with seeds in your chicken compost.
Absolutely. Again, everything but chicken goes into that compost. So two things are going to kill the weed seeds. The high temperatures, once it hits, it's gone. But once it hits the second and third week pile, it's going to be hitting those high temperatures in the center, and it's going to be killing weed seeds. But also you're having your chickens go through everything, and they're going to be, believe me, if there's a weed seed in there, they're going to find it, and then they're going to eat it, especially if you're feeding them the proper amount in those compost rings. Go ahead. That's okay. I'll take weird questions. So donkeys are ruminants. So again, now horses and donkeys get a little bit more difficult because these are like beasts of burden. So they could potentially be used for other things. Now, if they're like the replacement of a tractor on a property and they're hauling and they're pulling and stuff like that, then they're going to need more nutrition, but it's justified to grow specific nutrition for them because they're serving a purpose of like hauling heavy materials and stuff like that. So that's where it kind of depends. If you're raising them as pets, then they will be just fine on grass. The only grass or hay you should be feeding them if you have pastures is stuff that's in pasture or that you cut from your pasture or tree hay. Now, if they're beasts of burden, then fully justified in giving them something higher calorie, like maybe higher quality grass or something like that. So, and then bats, I mean, they do pretty fine in nature. I would just put up some bat houses, put up like a plethora of bat houses, and then maybe even put in some like stagnant water areas as well. Just so you can like kind of feed them. Why bats? You getting into like a makeup line? Oh, okay. Yeah, then I would just do a bunch of bat houses. Most issues with bats, they have plenty of bugs. They have plenty of food sources. It's housing. So if you build the habitat, they'll for sure come. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sun or heat, is there a problem having any of those piles in more of a shaded area versus a sunny area?
The only thing it's going to affect is the amount of water you have to give to that system. That's what it's mainly going to affect. If it's in a sunny area, then like where I do it, I make sure that the midday to eastern or western sun is blocked off because that's where it starts really getting hot. But it limits or increases how much you have to water it. So that's really the main factor.
Do you recommend a thermometer when you're doing the composting method?
I would get a compost thermometer, but not just any compost thermometer. I would get a RioTemp thermometer. It's 4 feet long because you need to measure the temperature of the compost just right above the core of the compost because that's going to be its hottest and that's where the thermophilic process is occurring. That's what you need the temperature of. So I would get a 4-foot RioTemp stainless steel calibrated compost thermometer. So it's one where you can actually calibrate the temperatures, making sure you're actually getting the correct temperatures. Because 1 degree of the temperature left or right either means this compost pile is sitting for 24 hours or flipping immediately. So that 1 degree counts. So you can calibrate it once you get to home. Like put the tip on a block of ice, should be freezing temperatures. You put the tip in boiling water, should be boiling temperatures. And then if it's right on both of them, then you have a calibrated thermometer. If not, you can like adjust the spring in the back. But RioTemp 4-foot stainless steel compost thermometer. REOTEMP. I don't get an affiliate link. It's just the best one. Next question.
What do you think about geese?
What do I think about geese? I don't really, but geese. So I guess it depends if we're counting Muscovy ducks as geese or ducks. If Muscovy count as geese, I think they're wonderful. If they don't count as geese, and if you're unfamiliar, there's a whole debate about whether they're ducks or geese. I don't really care. They quack like a duck and they taste like duck, and they taste like beef actually. So. But geese, if you have like a particular predator issue and you're doing the Joel Salatin route and you don't have to interact with that goose very much, and you put like a guardian goose out there with your chickens, sure, go ahead. But if you're on like a very interactive, smaller homestead and you have to interact with geese every single day, like all it's going to need is like one time of chasing my daughter and then we're eating geese that day. So I try not to make like animals that are going to be and people that are going to be a hassle in my life. I try to remove them from my life. Like homesteading is difficult enough. I don't need difficult players in the system that I put there intentionally. So anything that like doesn't obey the fence, anything that requires like way too much maintenance per day, anything that's a problem system is going to get phased out. And if somebody else wants to do that system, then and I want that, then I'll barter with them. That's my line of thinking. Also, I have to have very streamlined systems because I leave town all the time. This is a curse of the consultant is like I can either grow food myself or I can show other people how to grow food. Go ahead.
You said Yetis?
Guinea.
Guineas. Oh, man.
Are you talking to Patty? You just know all my hated animals. All right, so guineas are the dumbest animal in existence. Like if they're crossing the road, this is a real life story. It happened. I was driving down the road in Texas, so it's at least 65 miles an hour. I see a flock of guineas crossing the road, so I come to a complete stop and wait for them to cross the road. And then, like after they all cross and they're in the next pasture, I start getting back up to 65 miles an hour. And as soon as I cross where the guineas were, one of them just jumps back and like spider webs my window, and it died on him. Like it was fine. That being said, guineas, like they're really good at wiping out ticks. Like you don't have to provide food for them once they're out on their own foraging, so that's a plus. They're very, very noisy, which could be annoying to you, or it could be a benefit if you're using them as like an alarm clock or an alarm dog or whatever. I honestly don't even hear guineas anymore. Like it's like a chicken or a rooster. I don't really hear that anymore. It just kind of, I know it's going to be there, so it's not like shocking. So it doesn't really bother me if they're right outside the bedroom window or anything like that. I'm not going to hear it. So that being said, like now I do hear the cats fighting because every time I think it's demons. Y'all ever heard cats fight? It's insane. But the guineas, if you have a tick issue, use them to wipe out your ticks. 100%. They're fantastic at that. Buy twice as many as you think you'll need because as soon as you let them out, they're going to start dwindling down. They're not a permanent fixture on the homestead. They're definitely like a season for them. But if they wipe out the ticks, then you've got 4 good years before you have to do it again. You should sell those guys. You should like advertise them that, hey, these guys are this many years old and they hatch their own babies and stuff like that. You should advertise and sell those guys because, yeah, that's a lot of problems fixed right there. You're fixing genetic issues. Oh, man. Go ahead.
And if turkeys wipe out the tick population, why would you go with guineas?
You answer your own question. I mean, I would pick turkeys. Guineas are dumber than turkeys because, like, turkeys will learn. Guineas stay stupid. They just stay stupid. So if you would rather have turkeys and turn those ticks into protein that you can eat guineas. Okay. They what?
Don't break him. We want him to come back.
I'm fine. Yeah, the guineas. Yeah, they're in the same category as goats for me. They're too much of a problem for me to justify. I do like eating goats though. Go ahead.
Question from the internet from K Kim asks, "What is your take on compost piles and trying not to attract possums and raccoons to them?"
This is a question I get a lot. I have never once had this happen. I have never happened. Now, part of it might be due to I've never had raccoons or possums get into my compost pile. But what I do is anything that they would want to get into, if I'm doing like an 18-day style pile where the chickens aren't involved at all, anything like that, I'll add to the center of the compost pile. So if I have, like, let's say I process chickens and I'm going to make an 18-day pile out of the chicken processing, like the guts and stuff, I'll put all the organs, all the feet, all the heads, stuff like that in the center of the compost pile. So it's surrounded by very, very high carbon amounts. And I've never, doing it that method, I've never had anything get into my compost piles. But it is a fairly common question. Has anybody had anything get in their compost piles? You have? Yeah, I don't know. I've just never had it happen for some reason. I've done it in the city and in the country, and I've never had an issue. Go ahead.
My city compost pile was squirrels and dogs.
The dogs, yeah. So the dogs will get in the compost pile. So there's that. But if you have it caged, like in an 18-day pile, they're only going to get so far. Squirrels, yeah, that's possible. Now, once it starts getting in high temperatures, they're only going to get so far in before they're like, oh, crap. Now, if you do compost in the winter, or going into the colder months, careful lifting that tarp because you will have a snake under there every once in a while. But you're already making compost, so just add him to it. Yeah, just, hey, no, I lived in Australia. I'm done with snakes. I'm so done with snakes. That was an everyday process with no guns. Yeah. Anyway, any other questions? Y'all got anything else? Absolutely. So growing up in Tonganoxie, Kansas, there was a neighbor down the road who had cows. And if your dog got out and would go mess with his cows, he would shoot your dog. And then he would hang him from the tree by the road so you could come find out where your dog was. It was scarring as a child, but now I understand. Go ahead. Oh my goodness. Okay, Dad. Yeah. Because I watched Fresh Prince of Bel-Air growing up when I was a kid, and who didn't? Who doesn't want a butler at that age? That'd be cool. But okay, Dad. Yeah, he got on yesterday's live stream too. Him and Mom. They're like, "Way to go, pumpkin," and all that stuff. Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions for William?
I'll be here the rest of the day.
He will be here the rest of the day. William, where can people find out more information about you?
The Permaculture Consultant on YouTube. I don't have a website. I barely have social media, but you can for sure find me on YouTube. And if you need to get in contact with me over anything for consultations, soil tests, anything like that, hit me up at the permacultureconsultant@gmail.com. It's the same name at gmail.com.
And where will you be the rest of today so people can come talk to you about ostriches, emus, and cassowaries?
I will be sandwiched between those two tents right there. I'm in the blue tent. I'll be there the rest of the day.
All right, guys, let's give William Bond a round of applause. All right, before you all walk away, real quick, I want to bring up the president of Midwest Preparedness Project because he has a series of questions he would like to ask you. So, Patrick Henry, take it away.
Thank you, SSG Spags. Okay, real quick, I'd like to do a couple of things real quick, and then we will disperse and then get ready for our next class and set up. So again, thank you all for being here. This is an amazing event, and it's an amazing opportunity. Just so you all know, we will be giving away one of William's very highly coveted certificates later this evening for the drawing. I know there's a couple of people here in the crowd that will fight you for them, so good luck with that. It's like Thunderdome, 2-man enter, 1-man leave, and to the victor go the spoils. Yeah, Jamie, I'm looking at you, buddy. So I would like to do a connection round real quick. While we're all here, while we have a lot of people in the crowd, I would like to help build a mutual assistance group inside the Midwest Preparedness Project. We have been working diligently to grow those circles within circles. We have just recently chartered a Midwest Preparedness Project organization in Lee's Summit, headed up by our great friend, Kyle Benoit. Where are you, Kyle? You up here? He's not because he's off doing, oh, there he is. Everybody look at Kyle. Hey! And his beautiful wife, Miss Angelica, who is our torchbearer with Aria. And so they're helping to spearhead a grassroots movement to build this thing from coast to coast across the country. We want to see more of this everywhere we go, because again, in the spirit of faith, family, and fellowship, if you don't have that core foundation, those 3 principles, or at least something in that light, we're probably looking at the wrong things. So what I'd like to do next is look for, as John and Victoria, friend up here, are you guys up here? There you are. I see you. So you guys are in Paola, right? Paola area. Who else is from Paola? All right, Dave Furness. Okay, so what I'd like to do is start a connection. I want you guys to take the action item on yourself. We've all of this legwork for you. We've put you all in one place. Now it's up to you to build a mutual assistance group where you live, right? So you guys will take the onus to look each other up. Who here is from the Topeka area? Okay, look at the show of hands around you. Hold them up. Don't put them down yet. Find each other. Seek each other out. Who here is from the Kansas City area? Okay, good. Seek each other out. I want you to go forth and conquer in the spirit of faith, family, and fellowship. Look for those friends in high and low places because, again, in the spirit of what we're doing here, this is really just an extension of what you're doing at home or what you could be doing at home if you just looked to your left, your right, and behind you. So these people, these connections that we're building for you, you should take that and turn that into an actionable item to build your mutual assistance group. If not in the spirit of the Midwest Preparedness Project, and whatever it is that you need or want or have to do back home. So who here came from out of state? Anybody from out of state? Wow, a few more hands. That's good. That's good. Who here traveled the furthest? Who here is from, what do you think you did? Where did you guys come from? Iowa. Iowa's not bad. Where are you guys from back there? Nebraska. Okay. Who traveled the furthest? It's probably Jonathan. Jonathan, how far did you travel? 930 miles. What is that? 15, 16 hours of driving? 60. So you have no excuse, you Topeka people. All right. So again, I just want to take a moment. Yes, Kip. Hey, who's from St. Joe? St. Joe? Okay. Yep.
Ecosystem building products in spring.
This is my man, Kip Traster. Did I say that right? Traster. Yes, I was testing you. You passed. Kip Traster from the St. Joe area. And what I want you to do after you leave this pavilion, look at this board here that Mr. Ed Breeden is leaning against. He's holding it up. He's doing a good job. Thank you for holding it up for us. Make sure you go over here and sign this board. Make sure you put where you're from, because someone else, like this good man over here, Dave, who came to me earlier and said, hey, dude, somebody signed that board from Paola. Like, I'm from Paola. I don't know who they are, but you freaking know everybody. You're like Rain Man. Connect me with these people. Connect the dots. You don't have to be that guy with the red strings and the map, and it's the aliens. You don't have to be that guy, but look someone up. Find friends, because I'm telling you guys, the world seems to be growing darker every day. The hate, the malice, the aggression that's being portrayed on the news, it is set to divide us, and for a reason. But the reason why you're here, I believe the reason why you're here is because you stand firm in your faith that will not shake your core principles of who you are, what you're looking to achieve, and the reason why God put you on this earth. So sign that board, put a picture on Facebook, tag it on our Instagram, our Twitter. We don't have TikTok, do we? No, we don't have TikTok because that's for the commies. And if you have TikTok, shame on you. That's right. SSG Spags here is holding up a QR code. If you could, I want to see as many people as possible. Come up here. Takes like 2 seconds. Scan that QR code with your phone. There's a connection card that will ask you a couple of questions. It'll get you in an opportunity for us to do it for you. If you're just so freaking lazy that you won't sign the board, you won't follow up with your Paola connections, we'll do it for you. Let us be your ground. This is a survey, so that way we can find out what we can do to better prepare and put on a better show for you. You don't have to be, wait, no, wrong show, Mark. That's Preppers After Dark. You missed that last night because you were cooking lamb. All right. Well, again, thank you all for attending the 25th anniversary of the Midwest Preparedness Project Festival. Give it up for our MC and host of the MPP, Mr. Bobby Spags. Thank you very much, guys. I turn it back over.
All right, you heard it. Survey right here. Tell us how we're doing. Ups, downs. If you know people who might want to be sponsors, local businesses who want to join the cause, if you want to become a vendor, all that information is on that survey. It helps us to serve you better. It helps us to get more people within the local community better. I could probably go out and get Walmart to sponsor us tomorrow. I'm pretty good at asking people for things, but I want your businesses to become sponsors. And there is no tiered list. I don't have this silver, gold, bronze nonsense. We're not corporate in that way. Some people give us $50. Some people give us an AR-15. Some people gave us a bunch of tables. It doesn't matter. It doesn't take much to become a sponsor of Midwest Preparedness. And then I'm going to slap you up here on the TV along with the guys who gave me $1,000 and $2,000. So get involved, scan the QR code, fill out the survey, and let's continue to build this and ripple that effect out through all of our communities and start joining all the local communities together into this big thing we call Midwest Preparedness Project. Next class is going to be at 1 p.m. Sean Kelly from Crunchy Mama Farms is going to bring up half a pig and show you what to do with it. So don't miss it. Until then, enjoy lunch. Please go shop with our vendors. Please go eat from the food truck. And for the love of God, go buy some opportunity tickets. All the new prizes are up on the table right now or up on the display. all the tickets from yesterday are still eligible. Have a great day. We'll see you at 1 o'clock.